The lecture hall was unusually quiet the next day. Gone were the whispers of disbelief and the muffled scoffs of alien superiority. Instead, the room buzzed with the quiet hum of holoscreens as students meticulously reviewed their notes from the previous exercise. Even the proudest minds among the Zrath and Iridith delegations seemed subdued, their usual air of arrogance replaced with contemplative focus. Leo Carter strolled in late, as usual, his holoscreen tucked under one arm and a smug grin plastered across his face. He felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room as he took his seat, but instead of the usual glares, there were nods of acknowledgement, or at least grudging respect. Professor Zolnayar floated to the center of the room, his multifaceted eyes sweeping over the students. Yesterday's exercise has yielded promising results. The Galactic Coalition's engineers have already begun implementing several of your designs in live simulations. This, I hope, demonstrates the importance of collaboration across species. The professor's gaze lingered on Leo. And it has shown us that even the most unconventional methods can hold great value. Leo raised his coffee cup in a mock toast, earning a mix of chuckles and irritated huffs from his peers. The debate. The lecture moved on, but the tension lingered. After class, a group of students surrounded Leo near the exit. At the forefront was Krell, the Zrath delegate, their crystalline form gleaming under the hall's ambient lights. Beside them stood 3 Iridith with their shimmering plumage, and several Drixians hovered nearby, their hive mind buzzing softly. "Human," Krell began, their voice clipped, "while your solutions have proven effective, I must protest the lack of artistry in your methods." Leo sighed, leaning against the wall. "Why does everyone here care so much about artistry? It's a freaking cargo relay tower, not a piece of art." One of the Iridith fluffed her feathers indignantly. "Because human engineering is more than function. It is a reflection of intellect, culture, and refinement." Leo shrugged. "Yeah, well, Earth's culture is about not dying. Function first, look second." The Drixian delegate chimed in, their voice a low, buzzing monotone. "Perhaps this focus on survival is what makes Deathworlders unique. Your methods are crude but undeniably adaptable." Krell clicked in frustration. "Adaptable, yes, but at what cost? If the Coalition adopts such primitive thinking, we risk regressing into brute efficiency rather than advancing as a civilization." Leo's expression darkened. "You think being practical is regressive? You know what's regressive? Losing a tower, a settlement, or lives because you overthought a solution. Artistry's great for museums, but out in the real world, people need things that work." The surrounding students exchanged uneasy glances. Krell's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of hesitation. "And yet," they said slowly, "your approach has forced us to rethink our assumptions. Perhaps there is merit in understanding the balance between functionality and refinement." Leo leaned forward, his arms crossed. "Exactly. It's not about throwing out artistry, it's about knowing when to prioritize function. If you can have both, great. But when lives are on the line, you need to make things work first." The Iridith delegate, feathers dimmed with thoughtfulness, spoke up. "Perhaps the true lesson here is not the superiority of one method over another, but the need to adapt our perspectives. The galaxy has much to learn from Deathworlders." Leo smirked. "Glad you're finally catching on." Recognition. The weeks that followed saw a seismic shift, ironically appropriate given the subject matter. The Coalition began integrating Leo's designs and principles into broader engineering frameworks. Cargo relay towers, once a delicate testament to alien elegance, now bore subtle but practical changes: shock absorbers, flexible materials, and wave-dispersing foundations. Leo's reputation spread across the university. Some hailed him as a disruptive genius, others viewed him as an uncultured anomaly. Regardless, his classmates began seeking his input on various projects. Even Krell, though still haughty, grudgingly consulted him during group exercises. One day, Professor Zolnayar approached Leo after a particularly intense session. "You have done more than solve engineering problems, Leo Carter. You have challenged assumptions, a skill far more valuable than mere intellect." Leo shrugged, his grin as casual as ever. "Just doing what humans do best, figuring things out as we go." Zolnayar's appendages curled in what Leo assumed was approval. "You may find that this ability, while undervalued by some, is what will propel you, and perhaps even the galaxy, forward." A lasting impression. As the semester drew to a close, Leo found himself reflecting on his time at the Galactic University. What had started as a curiosity, an experiment in sending a human to study among the stars, had turned into a lesson not just for him, but for the entire class. One evening, as he watched the gas giant HFY swirl outside the observation deck, Krell approached him. Their crystalline body glowed faintly, a sign of uncertainty. "Human," they said, their tone softer than usual, "your methods. They may lack elegance, but they have value." "I misjudged you." Leo turned, surprised but amused. That almost sounded like an apology. Krell clicked, their edges shimmering. "Do not push your luck." Leo laughed, extending a hand. "Fair enough. Truce." Krell regarded the hand for a moment before extending an angular limb. Truce. As they stood there, two representatives of vastly different worlds, Leo realized something. His time at the Galactic University wasn't just about proving humanity's worth. It was about showing that even the galaxy's brightest minds could learn a thing or two from Earth's scrappy, problem-solving nature. And he had a feeling they'd be learning a lot more in the future. The Galactic University was the pride of the coalition of sentient species, a bastion of knowledge nestled in the orbit of the gas giant HFY. Its lecture halls were renowned for hosting the brightest minds in the galaxy, species that had long since surpassed war and scarcity to focus on intellectual pursuits. In the sprawling Hall of Applied Sciences, a diverse assembly of students awaited their latest challenge. Their bodies glistened with scales, shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, or exuded the faint hum of crystalline vibrations. Among them, sticking out like a sore thumb, was Leo Carter, the sole human in the class. Leo slouched in his seat, absently tapping on his holoscreen as he played an Earth game, something involving matching colorful shapes. Around him, the room buzzed with the soft sounds of alien languages and quiet calculations. While his classmates adjusted their Neuralink implants or double-checked their multi-limbed tools, Leo exuded the relaxed demeanor of someone who wasn't taking this seriously. Hovering above the class was Professor Zolnayar, his multi-eyed visage an imposing sight as he addressed the students. His Tkari form, all 6 limbs and translucent carapace, glowed faintly under the ambient lights of the hall. "Today's exercise," Zolnayar began, his voice translating seamlessly into the earpieces of every species present, "is a test of ingenuity and application. The problem before you is one that has baffled many engineers and cost countless resources. Your task is to find a solution that the galaxy can afford." A 3D hologram materialized at the center of the hall, depicting a towering structure. Its sleek, modular design spiraled upward, and Leo squinted at the glowing labels. "This," Zolnayar continued, "is a cargo relay tower, essential for planetary logistics. Its design has served the Coalition for centuries. However, this model is proving inadequate on planets classified as Class 2 or higher. On such worlds, seismic activity renders these towers vulnerable, leading to catastrophic collapses." The hologram shifted to show a simulation of the tower buckling and crumbling under tremors. The aliens around Leo gasped or chittered in distress. He scratched his chin thoughtfully, unimpressed. "Your task," Zolnayar said, "is to design a retrofit that increases the tower's seismic durability while adhering to strict resource and cost constraints. You have 4 hours." Immediately, the hall came alive. Aliens whispered in their native tongues or clicked their appendages as they summoned additional holodisplays. The Zrath, crystalline beings with angular forms that sparkled in the light, began calculating stress tolerances. The feathered Iridith fanned their plumes, consulting intricate charts of weight distribution. The insectoid Drictions hummed in unison, their hive mind generating potential solutions at an astonishing rate. Leo, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair. He pulled up the specs for the tower on his holoscreen and skimmed the data. It was well designed by most standards, efficient in material use, modular, and adaptable. The problem wasn't the tower itself, it was how it interacted with the ground during quakes. He smirked and muttered, "I know this one." Hours passed, and the tension in the hall grew palpable. The Zrath had generated dozens of models, each more complex than the last, but none passed the efficiency requirements. The Iridith proposed elaborate counterweights and stabilizers, but their designs exceeded resource limits. The Drictions, renowned for their precision, created a structure so intricate that it was deemed impractical to construct on Class 2 worlds. Professor Zolnayar's compound eyes scanned the room, his tone sharp. "I expected better from this class. You are the brightest minds of your species. Surely one of you can find a viable solution." The aliens murmured nervously. The pressure mounted, but one figure remained distinctly unaffected. Leo Carter. He was doodling on his holoscreen, drawing a rudimentary spaceship that looked like a child's first attempt at art. Occasionally, he glanced at the specks of the tower, his expression one of mild amusement. Finally, an Iridith turned toward him, her shimmering feathers bristling with indignation. "Human. You appear unconcerned. Do you not understand the gravity of this challenge?" Leo looked up lazily, smirking. "I get it. The tower's falling down, cause of quakes. Fix the foundation, and you fix the problem. Simple." The room fell silent. Several students turned their appendages, eyes, or antennae toward him. The Iridith puffed up, her feathers glowing a bright orange. "If it's so simple, why haven't you proposed a solution?" Leo shrugged. Didn't think anyone wanted to hear primitive human ideas. "But fine. Give me a sec." He tapped on his holoscreen, sketching a crude design. He projected it onto the central display, where it floated alongside the hologram of the tower. "There," he said, leaning back. "Add shock absorbers under the base. Springs, gel layers, whatever you've got. They'll take the hit from the quakes and spread out the energy so it doesn't wreck the structure." The room erupted into murmurs. The Zrath clicked in confusion. Springs? Absurd. Such primitive mechanisms lack elegance. The Iridith scoffed. "This is barbaric engineering." Professor Zolnayar raised a limb, silencing the noise. "Let us test this hypothesis." He input Leo's suggestion into the simulation. The hologram flickered, then displayed a quake striking the retrofitted tower. To everyone's astonishment, the structure held firm. The shock absorbers flexed under the strain, dissipating the seismic energy without transferring it to the tower. The results materialized on the display. Durability increased, 75% resource use reduced, 42% cost efficiency, plus 68%. The hall was silent. Leo smirked. "Guess barbaric engineering works." The silence in the hall stretched for what felt like an eternity. All eyes, compound, multifaceted, or otherwise, were fixed on the simulation results. The holographic cargo tower stood intact, its shock absorbers having absorbed the seismic energy like a charm. A few sparks from one of the Zrath students flickered, a physical sign of their agitation. "Impossible," Krell, the crystalline Zrath delegate, finally clicked. Their angular frame shimmered with iridescent light as they stepped forward. "Your design, it lacks sophistication. Such a rudimentary approach cannot surpass our advanced algorithms." Leo snorted, reclining lazily in his chair. "Doesn't matter if it's fancy. What matters is it works." The Iridith delegation erupted in squawks of indignation. One of their representatives, a towering avian with shimmering plumage, flared her feathers in frustration. "Primitive. Barbaric. Your Deathworlder instincts taint the purity of true engineering." Leo raised an eyebrow, sitting up slightly. "Deathworlder instincts? You mean problem-solving?" "Yeah, we're pretty good at that." Before the argument could escalate, Professor Zolnayar raised a tentacle, commanding silence. His multifaceted eyes locked onto Leo, then shifted to the rest of the class. "The solution is unorthodox, yes. Primitive, some might argue. But it is effective. And that, students, is the essence of true engineering, solutions that work." A ripple of murmurs passed through the students, though most remained skeptical. Zolnayar continued, turning his massive holographic gaze to the class. "Run your simulations. Test the human's design. Prove its flaws, if you can." The next few hours turned the lecture hall into a battlefield of ideas. Every species, from the crystalline Zrath to the insectoid Drixians, poured over Leo's design with their own variations, desperate to find its limits. The Zrath focused on material strength, suggesting denser alloys to reinforce the absorbers. Their efforts increased durability but dramatically inflated costs. One of them, visibly frustrated, muttered, "This would never pass regulatory standards." The Iridith, with their obsession for elegance, proposed weight distribution mechanisms to complement the shock absorbers. Their designs looked beautiful in the holograms but failed under stress tests, collapsing in a flurry of glowing error messages. Even the Drixians, revered for their hive-mind precision, stumbled. Their intricate designs introduced unnecessary complexities that rendered the towers nearly impossible to assemble in real-world conditions. Meanwhile, Leo watched from the sidelines, occasionally spinning his chair in boredom. His classmates, frantic and frustrated, kept glancing at him as though expecting him to fail under their scrutiny. Finally, Krell approached, their crystalline form refracting the room's light into a dazzling array of colors. "Human," they clicked, their tone sharp. "How did you develop this crude mechanism?" Leo shrugged. "We've been building earthquake-proof stuff on Earth for centuries. You can't live on a planet that shakes itself apart every couple of weeks without figuring out a few tricks. Springs, gel pads, counterweights, they're simple, cheap, and they work. But simplicity," Krell insisted, "is not synonymous with efficiency." Leo smirked. "You're right. But overcomplicating things isn't either. You don't need a perfect solution, you need one that gets the job done." The murmurs in the room grew louder as more simulations confirmed the effectiveness of Leo's retrofitted design. Even the Drixians, though silent, began incorporating elements of his shock absorber concept into their hive mind schematics. The professor's central display filled with updated simulations, all of which succeeded when the humans' design principles were included. Despite the undeniable results, the tension in the room only increased. For centuries, these species had prided themselves on their intellectual superiority, their advanced technologies far surpassing anything a Deathworld like Earth could produce. Yet here they were, bested by a human who had spent most of the exercise doodling spaceships. Professor Zolnayar floated forward, addressing the class. "You have now seen the limits of your own approaches. And you have seen how this human's primitive design excels where yours fail. What do we learn from this?" The hall was silent, save for the faint buzzing of the Drixians' hive mind communication. Finally, an Iridith student spoke up, her feathers glowing a subdued green. "That efficiency does not always require elegance." "Correct," Zolnayar replied, his compound eyes fixed on Leo, who was now leaning forward with a smug grin. "And what do you have to say for yourself, Leo Carter?" Leo shrugged. "I'm just saying, sometimes, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Or the spring." Several aliens groaned at his nonchalance, but Zolnayar let out a sound that, according to the translator, approximated a chuckle. "A valuable lesson for all of us, it seems." After class, the mood remained tense. As Leo packed up his holoscreen, a group of students gathered near his desk. Krell, shimmering with muted light, addressed him directly. "Human," they said, their tone clipped, "your solution may have worked, but it lacks artistry. It is unsatisfying." Leo grinned. "Maybe. But it's satisfying enough when your tower's still standing after a quake, right?" The Iridith delegate stepped forward, feathers flaring slightly. "Your reliance on brute practicality diminishes the purity of the intellectual process." Leo raised an eyebrow. "You know what really diminishes the intellectual process? A collapsed building." The group fell silent, their objections faltering against the simple truth of his words. One of the Drixians buzzed softly, their voice echoing through their translator. "Perhaps there is value in this. Deathworlder logic." "Damn right there is," Leo replied. "Welcome to the real world, folks." As he walked away, leaving a trail of stunned aliens behind him, Leo couldn't help but chuckle. For a species everyone underestimated, humans sure knew how to make an impression. The legend of the hippopotamus had spiraled far beyond anything Elliot could have anticipated. What began as an offhand remark in a xenobiology lecture had morphed into a symbol of Earth's resilience, and its supposed danger. Across the Intergalactic Academy of Solara Prime, whispers of Earth's terrifying beasts continued to spread. For Elliot, the attention was equal parts amusing and exhausting. But the legend took a serious turn when Chancellor Vyras summoned Elliot once again, this time to a high-level meeting with representatives of the Galactic Security Council. "Human Elliot," Vyras began, their crystalline form refracting the light ominously. "The galactic community has concerns. Your planet's capacity to coexist with such chaotic creatures raises questions about your species' stability." Elliot frowned, crossing his arms. "So let me get this straight. You're worried about humanity because we didn't kill off every dangerous animal on our planet?" A towering, insectoid Krellian delegate clicked their mandibles. "It is not merely the creatures, human. It is the implications of a species thriving in such an unpredictable environment. Your survival suggests either reckless adaptability or a capacity for concealed power." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "You think humans are hiding something?" The Krellian tilted its head. "It is plausible." The conversation shifted from curiosity to thinly veiled accusations. Elliot realized this wasn't just about the hippopotamus anymore, It was about humanity as a whole. To these aliens, Earth was a planet of chaos, and humans were its unpredictable offspring. The test of resilience. Frustrated but unwilling to back down, Elliot proposed an idea. If you're so scared of a hippo, why not simulate one? Test your theories about how dangerous it is. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Viras spoke. A controlled simulation could provide clarity. Within hours, the Academy's advanced simulation chamber was configured. The environment was crafted to mimic an Earth-like riverbank, complete with a holographic hippopotamus. To Elliot, the digital recreation seemed almost comical, but to the gathered aliens, it was a fearsome spectacle. The first volunteers were a team of Gorthan warriors, renowned across the galaxy for their strength and combat prowess. Clad in armor and armed with plasma weapons, they entered the simulation with confidence. Moments later, they were running for their lives. The simulated hippo, programmed with Earth's apex predator behavior, charged with terrifying speed. Plasma shots ricocheted harmlessly off its thick hide. One Gorthan tried to leap to safety, only to be swept aside by the beast's massive jaws. Outside the simulation, the audience watched in stunned silence. A Naurian whispered, "It's unstoppable." Humanity reframed. After the simulation ended, Elliot stood before the crowd of alien students and faculty. The fear in their eyes was palpable, but Elliot saw an opportunity to change the narrative. "Look, I get it," he began. "The hippopotamus seems terrifying. But you're missing the point. Humanity isn't dangerous because of the animals we live with, it's because of how we live with them." He paused, letting his words sink in. Humans don't control the chaos. We adapt to it. We learn from it. The reason we survived hippos and hurricanes and everything else Earth threw at us isn't because we're the strongest, it's because we're the most determined. The room was silent as his words echoed. Even Chancellor Viras seemed contemplative, their crystalline form dimming slightly in thought. "Maybe," Elliot continued, "that's something you can learn from us. It's not about eliminating every threat, it's about finding a way to thrive despite them." A new perspective. In the days following the simulation, the Academy's attitude toward Elliot, and humanity, began to shift. The myth of the hippopotamus didn't disappear, but it evolved. It became a symbol of resilience, a testament to Earth's chaotic beauty and humanity's ability to endure. Elliot found himself at the center of this newfound respect. Students who once dismissed him as a fragile curiosity now sought him out for advice, asking about Earth's other chaotic creatures and the strategies humans use to coexist with them. Even Threx, the imposing Gorthan, approached him one evening. "Human," he rumbled, his tone less confrontational than usual. "I have been thinking about your words. Perhaps there is strength in chaos." Elliot smirked. "Told you. Chaos isn't so bad once you get used to it." The legend lives on. Back in his dorm, Elliot recounted the day's events to his roommate, Clyrin. The Zorvathian, always the skeptic, shook their crystalline head with amusement. "You've done it, human. You've turned a river beast into a galactic legend." Elliot leaned back in his chair, grinning. "Hey, if they want to think Earth is a planet of unstoppable monsters, who am I to correct them?" Clyrin's shimmer brightened with laughter. "You know, they're probably wondering what else you're hiding." "Good," Elliot replied, his grin widening. "Let them wonder." As the Academy lights dimmed for the night, Elliot stared out at the stars. He had come to Solara Prime feeling small and insignificant, but now he realized that humanity's strength wasn't in its size or technology, it was in its grit. And if the galaxy wanted to believe that humanity could thrive in chaos, well, they weren't wrong.